All right, everybody, hello. This is Jake, and this is Politics by Jake. And this is the show for Sunday, November 30th. Can you believe it? Boy, another month gone. One more month to the year, and then we're totally gone with that. Just amazing. And as I always do at the beginning of the show, I try to explain, or I like to explain, that Politics by Jake is about political education. I'm a business advisor. I've had a career in law for so long, I'm embarrassed to tell you how long it is, and also as a business advisor. And I have a love of history and an interest in history and in political matters. And what we try to do, or presume to do in the show, is talk about history, political history, what's going on, political education, give you an idea of what is going on when people say certain words, what they mean, and how that applies, and when it's just a bunch of nonsense, and when the person is saying it doesn't know what they're talking about, and then when they do, or if they do, or if they mean something different than what it actually means. So we do a world overview, which we rarely get to because we've got a clear present existential danger, and that is Donald Trump, that is MAGA, that is the cult, if you want to call it that, that is the fascist cabal, if you want to call it that. I like calling it that. I think that it is definitionally correct. So with that in mind, we welcome you to the show, and let's get started. So I wanted to start out talking about Trump's second term abuses of power, not the ones in the first term, but the ones in the second term. And so let's go with one of the more recent ones. He has called certain senators traitors, and he has suggested that they should be executed. Now, this is authoritarianism 101. He has publicly declared sitting United States senators, one of whom is Mark Kelly, who, all I can say, is an estimable individual. Someone like Trump would probably consider him a traitor because he's a threat to what Trump himself stands for and what he wants to do. Now, let me just give you a little background on who this guy is. He was born in 1964. He's a politician. He's a retired astronaut. He's a former naval officer, and he's serving presently as the senior United States Senator from Arizona. And, you know, Arizona, not really a flaming liberal or progressive state, is it? And yet Trump said that he was a traitor and that he should be executed. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. He is a member of the Democratic Party. He flew combat missions during the Gulf War as a naval aviator before being selected as a NASA space shuttle, not just an occupant of the space shuttle, but a pilot. In 1996, he flew his first space mission in 2001. He flew another one in 2006. He flew another one in 2008. And he flew another one in 2011. And the way he actually became a senator, Kelly's wife, the then Arizona Representative Gabby Giffords, was shot and nearly killed in an assassination attempt in Arizona. Kelly retired subsequent to this from the Navy and NASA that October. In 2013, Kelly and Giffords founded a nonprofit political action committee, Americans for Responsible Solutions. That's all you have to say with regard to whether Donald Trump thinks he's an enemy or not right there. Responsible Solutions, oh my God. And it campaigned for things like gun control measures, universal background checks, so on and so forth. On February 12, 2019, Kelly announced his candidacy for Arizona's Class 3 U.S. Senate seat in a 2020 special election, and he won the Democratic primary on August 4th, 2020, and defeated incumbent Republican Martha McSally in the general election on November 3rd, becoming, get this, the first Democrat to win this seat since 1962. Like I said, Arizona, not really known as a flaming liberal or progressive state, are they? Not since 1962, they're not. So he was sworn in, and he was elected in 2022. He was elected to a full term in office, and he defeated another Republican challenger, a guy named Blake Masters. Kyrsten Sinema departed from the Senate in 2025, and that has made Kelly Arizona's senior senator. And I could say more about him, but Donald Trump thinks he's a traitor and wants him executed. So I just, I don't exactly, know what to say. Actually, I do know what to say, but he suggested that they deserved hanging, firing squads, or some other form of execution. And getting back to what we're talking about, which is Donald Trump's abuses of power, this is illegal as hell. It's incitement to violence, moreover. It's abuse of power. It's extrajudicial threat. But his supporters, including pardoned January 6th attackers, have already shown, and this is the concern, have already shown willingness to act on his signals. And what this constitutes, therefore, is the president using the bully pulpit as a weaponized threat. So in other words, it may be extrajudicial, but there's nothing to stop Donald Trump's private army from taking advantage of this and going after Senator Kelly. And this is rule by intimidation, with a paramilitary gloss, I might add. He's pardoned violent extremists as a de facto private army. I just kind of touched on this before. He's pardoned insurrectionists. He's pardoned violent offenders. He's pardoned the worst of the January 6th actors. He's empowered militia-adjacent individuals, and they openly view him as their commander. This is not clemency. These people are violent offenders. They deserve to be behind bars. What this is the assembling by Donald Trump of a private loyalty network backed by implicit violence. He has threatened individual governors. Trump has publicly declared some governors are illegitimate, some are traitors to America, some are enemies of the state. That would be Newsom of California. That would be Pritzker of Illinois, for example. When a president labels a specific governor a traitor, that's not normal political rhetoric. It's an authoritarian targeting maneuver. He's weaponized the DOJ for revenge. This includes investigations launched based on his personal grudges, classified individuals targeted, civil servants purged, threats of charges for disloyalty, reversals of long-standing legal norms. And, interestingly, Bush the Younger, he was like this too. He was just like this. He's long gone. We forget how bad he really was. But he felt this way too. He valued loyalty to him above anything. He didn't value loyalty to the Constitution above loyalty to him. And this is, of course, the way Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is even worse. 470 plus people on Donald Trump's retribution list. And this is, that, by the way, the source on that is Reuters. And that's an estimated number that they have based on the research that they've done. This is precisely what I often say on the show. The presidency has been turned, among other things, into a tool of personal vengeance. He's publicly called for military tribunals. He's flirted with treating political opponents as wartime enemies. He's using military justice against civilians, which you can't do. He's suggesting televised tribunals for enemies within. I mean, this is banana republic stuff, people. He's attempted to replace independent agencies with what are essentially political commissars. And for example, this is like DOGE, the Super Liaison Initiative, independent agencies forced to submit to a White House inserted overseers. That's what DOGE was. Bypassing Congress, bypassing legal independence. This is why Trump says I can do anything I want. This is where it comes from. And because the Democrats really don't have much power in the situation they're in right now, they can't stop it. And the Republicans are in thrall to Trump, which means they're captivated by him. They are compelled by him. They view him with a mystic, otherworldly, superior, ethereal quality that causes them to fall in line. What's the old saying about Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line? That's what this is. That's what this is to the nth degree. So this is the bypassing of Congress, and the majorities are all Republican. The majority in the Supreme Court is highly Republican by about 6-3. So he's bypassing the legislative branch. He's bypassing the House. He's bypassing the Senate. He is the executive branch, and he's got the Supreme Court that will generally back him up. He's bypassing legal independence, turning technocratic agencies into political ones. And this is a centralization of power. This is authoritarian by administrative design. Some more things that he's done. The East Wing demolition. Really, this is illegal. The president doesn't have the authority to do that. This is a person who, it's an unsupervised, unreviewed, arguably illegal, although I know there's an argument about that, historically destructive, and it's been done without even pretending to seek approval. Now, why, you might say, someone might come up and say, well, the White House is exempt from this. Look, the White House is a historic building. A modicum of respect of any president would require seeking approval, which surely the Republican Congress and surely the right-wing Supreme Court would give him. But he didn't do it. And why didn't he do it? Because this is what his desire is. His desire is to do everything the way he wants to do it. This is autocracy, right? I can pardon anyone. I can declare any governor a traitor. I can demand military tribunals. I can undo a century of institutional checks. And there's something called mos maiorum. Mos maiorum comes from the Latin. It means the ways of the ancients. It means the customs. It means the way things are done that are not necessarily codified, but which history and a respect for institution and a respect for common decency, none of which Donald Trump has, demand something less than this unilateral destructive action, which is so typical and so common to Donald Trump and his psychology. And the East Wing demolition, it's architectural authoritarianism. It's a symbolic flux. It's incitement as governing, if you will. When Trump says people should be hanged, he's not making policy. He is not issuing legal directives. He is sending a coded signal to his most extreme supporters that they have moral permission to act outside lawful boundaries. It's stochastic violence. It's government by random loyalist enforcement. This is the extrajudicial governments, the hallmark of collapsing democracies, treating the White House like private property, moving furniture, redecorating historic spaces, demolition, removal of oversight, the new ballroom, the FDR Lincoln modifications. He believes as if the White House belongs to him personally. This is the mentality of a monarch. It's the mentality of an autocrat, not a public servant. Disregard for constitutional boundaries includes using patriotism as a cover for centralization, dismantling norms that no president has violated, ignoring constitutional review processes, treating SCOTUS criticism as optional, plus the biggest one. He openly asserts that he cannot commit a crime as president. And guess who supported him in that? The United States Supreme Court. This is Louis XIV time, the Sun King, the one who said, L'État, c'est moi. That means the state, it's me. I'm the state. L'État, c'est moi. This is Putin. This is Erdogan. This is Orban. This is the straight path to autocracy. No bureaucracy, no equal opportunity, but the dangerous authoritarian actions that undermine due process, erode constitutional boundaries, embolden violent supporters, weaponize the presidency, threaten political opponents, and signal a shift from democracy to personalized rule. And at this point, let's take a break. This is Politics by Jake, and we will be right back. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. This is Politics by Jake, and we're back. Okay. So what we've been talking about is something real, something raw, something historic, and not in a good way, something dangerous, something no American alive has ever seen, because we are living under a president who no longer governs by law. He governs by threat, not by policy, not by persuasion, not by argument, not even executive power, but threat. Pure, uncut, unmasked intimidation pumped straight into the bloodstream of the country. And I want you to hear me. This is not normal. This is Jake from Politics by Jake saying this is not normal. This is not politics. This is not both sides. This is authoritarianism, wearing an American flag as a cape. What was it that Sinclair Lewis said? He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but feel free to look it up. He said, when fascism comes to America, it will come draped in the flag of the United States and carrying a Bible. This is authoritarianism. It's here, wearing an American flag as a cape. Let me give you the architecture of it, okay? The president, who calls senators traitors, who fantasizes openly for public consumption about hanging them. A sitting president in 2025 declared that certain senators are traitors. Not that they were wrong, not that they were misguided, not that they were political opponents. No, traitors, the constitutional word for someone who can be executed. And he said, maybe we should bring back the old penalties. And look, you know and I know, once the president says it, once his voice hits the airwaves, there are men out there who hear it as a directive, not a metaphor, not a joke, not but as a directive. Because he pardoned them. He elevated them. He wrapped them in absolution like a priest distributing absolution at the altar of violence. He's created a private loyalty militia out of men who have already proven that they will act outside the law. They proved that on January 6, 2021. This isn't politics. Like I said, this is paramilitary governance. And if you don't think that's a stain on history, dangerous, wake up. And we have a president who pardons violent extremists to build a personal army. He didn't pardon out of mercy. He didn't pardon out of principle. I wouldn't attribute necessarily intelligence to him, but a certain canniness, a certain shrewdness, because this is what he's always wanted to do. He's always wanted to be this way. He's been thinking about it since he was 5 years old, and first cried out, "Everything is unfair to me. Things are so unfair. I'm being treated so unfairly." This is what this is. He pardoned to create a core of loyalists who owe him everything and who have already shown that they fear nothing. These are men who have broken laws. They've spilled blood. They've smashed windows. They've assaulted police. And then they walked out of prison smiling. And why? Because the king waved his scepter. These are not supporters. These are not voters. These are shock troops. And he knows, as I said, exactly what he's doing. He's building what every autocrat builds, a loyal wing of people who don't care about limits, because the man in the big chair, he erased them. He demolished part of the White House because no one can stop him. I've told you this before. I'll say it again. The demolition of the East Wing wasn't construction. It wasn't renovation. It wasn't Donald Trump reminiscing about his career in real estate in New York. It wasn't modernization. It was domination. It was him showing that he can do whatever he wants. This is the operative phrase of his presidency that we all need to pay attention to. I can do whatever I want. A show of force. That's what it was. He destroyed literally a sacred icon, a sacred heritage of the United States. It was a performance. It was an exhibition of personal control over a national monument. Nobody said boo. The White House isn't his house. It isn't his personal property. It's the people's house. But he tore it apart. And he did so without oversight, without respect, without preservation review, without congressional consultation, without anything resembling lawful process, and in the absence, arguendo, that there was no necessary lawful process, without respect to decency, to the mos maiorum, to the ways of the elders, to the customs, the venerable customs of the United States of America. And why? He wanted a ballroom. He wanted a place to host the new court, because autocrats love big halls where they can play king. And the message was simple. I can tear down anything. I can erase anything. I can destroy anything. And no one can stop me. That's not democracy. That's monarchy with cheaper furniture. And this thing about the DOJ, the vengeance machine that he's got, every day we get new reports. Personal enemies targeted, journalists investigated, civil servants purged, prosecutions launched on rumor, regulatory actions weaponized, loyalty tests dressed up as policy reviews. Trump turned down the Department of Justice and he turned it into a personal hit squad. He's not governing, you understand? He's settling scores. And please hear this. Every dictatorship begins with the same transformation. The courts and the cops turned into the leaders' private lawyers and private goons. He crossed that Rubicon and he did it without blinking. He incites violence in the open and he calls it patriotism. When two people came and killed some National Guardsmen, what did he say? He immediately went to deploy 500 more troops because we're going to keep our cities safe. What an outrage! Because he knows that at some point, even though he has co-opted the response of the people who desire peace and will not and will fight their own urges, which he knows all too well, his murderous urges, which he knows all too well and which he knows that other people have, to not take offense but to strike back and to do those things which he knows are wrong, because you don't send military troops into American cities. American cities are governed by civil authorities. But he knows, and he knows that at some point, someone will get mad and someone will do what those two individuals did in shooting those National Guard troops. And then he can use that as an excuse. See, I was right. And we're going to double down, and we're going to put 500 more troops in Washington, D.C., because we're going to secure our cities. It's the worst kind of canard. It's the worst kind of phoniness. It's the worst kind of manipulation of the populace, who already are inclined to be peaceful, in order to abjure their peace and to poke them in the face and say, I dare you, fight back. Go ahead, I dare you. Physically resist that which you know is illegal and which he knows is illegal. When he stands on a stage and says they know what to do, that's not speech. That's not rhetoric. That's a signal. That's a whistle. That's a flare. That's a green light. He doesn't need to order anything explicitly. That's the beauty of stochastic terrorism. Or the ugliness, if you prefer, if you're paying attention. He simply creates the climate in which violence becomes a form of loyalty, in which violence becomes unavoidable, because people, a free people, will only take so much. They will only take so much abuse. They will only take so much trampling on constitutional principles by a grifter, by a con man, by a 34-time felon who they know doesn't respect the institutions, doesn't respect the Constitution, only when he can weaponize it. He knows. And he's gathered a cabal of people around him who love to have it so, who want to worship him, who think that he's a god, who think that he's a prophet, and who want him and are willing to cast off almost 250 years, well, it'll actually be 250 years pretty soon, of constitutional history so that they can have a king. That's how democracies die. Not always through a coup. He tried a coup, it didn't work. Sometimes through permission. Sometimes through nods. Sometimes through phrases that sound like patriotism and act like gasoline. I've spouted off here. I've gotten excited. You've heard me. The question I ask to you all is, where does that leave us? It leaves us in a place America never has been. A presidency that governs through lawlessness rather than law. A White House that treats violence as a tool. A leader who sees limits as invitations, not boundaries. And here's the part that no one wants to say out loud. I mean, well, I'll say it. He's not going to stop. He's mentally ill. He's a deeply troubled person, and he's been that way since he was 5 years old. And he's way around the bend now. It's his desire to be this. Make no mistake, to be a monarch, to be a king, to be an autocrat. And the thing about kings, the things about monarchs, the thing about autocrats, they don't slow down. They do not moderate. They are not moderate. They do not recalibrate. They escalate. They push until someone pushes back, or until the system collapses under the weight of its own unchallenged fear. This is why the 2026 elections are so important, and he knows, because he just went through the 2025 elections, and he saw it's just like the Eastern European countries under communism, and now Russia wants to come and take them all back, because that's what Putin is. He's what's known as a revanchist, revanche. That's a French word. He wants the Eastern European satellites back, at least the productive ones. He wants them back. But do the Eastern Europeans want back? No, they don't. You know why? Because they know Russia. And they don't want what Russia is selling. They don't want it at all. They want NATO. They want the European Union. That's the way of peace. It's not the way of Trump, not the way of Putin, but it's the way of peace. So people like that, people like Putin, people like Erdogan, people like Trump, it is their nature to push until somebody pushes back, or until the system collapses under the weight of its own fear. And we still have Constitution. We still have elections. And I say, don't worry about 2028, worry about 2026. Because if the House goes back, and he knows this, like the Eastern Europeans and Russia, in 2025, just this month, of which this is the last day of this show. I mean, it's not the last day of the show. It's the last show of the month, which happens to be the last day of November. He knows the American people have told him, we don't want what you're selling, you and your fascist cabal. We don't want it. And if the Democrats get the House in 2026 and 2027, well, I mean, elections are in November, so November of 2026, they'll impeach him. They'll impeach him up one side of the House and down the other side of the House, which is why I say worry about 2026, because he can't have that. But that's the only way to stop him. He's going to push until the people of the United States push back. And we'll have more to say about that, of course, as we're now coming up in a year, about shy a few weeks, on the elections of 2026, and we'll be talking about that. The American people need to push back. And that, my friends, is why I talk about this on this show. I don't do it to depress you. I don't do it to scare you, but to wake you up, to inform you. Because democracies die when good people disconnect. They die when the public is too dazzled by the show. They die when people say it can't happen here. But the truth is this: it is happening here. It's happening right now, almost even as I am speaking, in real time. And our job, yours and mine, is to name it, to face it, to fight it, and to refuse to flinch. And this is Politics by Jake, and we'll be back. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. Now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. Now, we've talked about this, and we're kind of going to talk about, well, let's call this part two of what we've been talking about. Let's call it the Autocrat's Handbook: How a President Takes Apart a Country Without Firing a Shot, okay? And welcome back, for those of you who just joined us or who have been staying with us, to Politics by Jake, where we strip the varnish off the truth and look at the raw wood underneath. And before the break, we talked about the president who governs by threat instead of law. And now I want to take you deeper. I want to take you into the mechanics of it. I want to take you into the blueprint, the method, the political physics of how a democracy is hollowed out from the inside. Because look, the demolition of the East Wing, the pardons, the threats to senators, the weaponized DOJ, these are not random events. They're steps. It's all deliberate. It's all patterned, you see. It's predictable. And if you know the pattern, you know exactly where we're heading. So let me break it down point by point, the way an old attorney would present an opening statement, which, I am, First step, I won't tell you how old, but I've been in the legal profession for, let's just say, a year or two. So, first step, dehumanize the opposition. Authoritarians always begin with the same incantation. And I want to say fascist because this is fascism. And Zoran Mondani was right about one thing. Trump is a fascist. And the people who support him are supporting fascism. But we don't want to, I don't care, but Americans are reluctant to attribute fascism to the United States, even though Sinclair Lewis, back in the 20th century, said that when fascism comes to America, it'll be draped in the flag and holding a Bible. He knew what it was. But sometimes people like to call it authoritarian, so let's just do that. While we call it fascism, let's call it authoritarian. And authoritarians always begin with the same incantation. They're not opponents, they're enemies. They're not misguided, they're not wrong, they're not competing for policy, they're enemies. They're traitors, they're vermin. There's a Nazi propaganda film that likens the Jews to vermin and talks about them being vermin, and in the next clip of the film shows a bunch of rats running around in a sewer. Trump has crossed into that territory repeatedly. He's said about opponents, he's just said, oh, they hate America. He's called senators traitors, sitting United States senators. He's accused state leaders of sabotage, of saying immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. Are you kidding me? That's fascism right there. That's Hitler right there. That's Nazism right there. That's white nationalism right there. That's the Ku Klux Klan right there. This is not rhetoric. This is categorization. He intends these things, placing millions of Americans into a subhuman, subpatriotic box. And why? Because once you dehumanize a group, anything becomes permissible. You can do anything. Because just like the Jews, if you have a picture of the Jews, and I'm referring once again to this Nazi propaganda film, and then you show a clip of rats, just an infestation of rats, you're sending a message. So the second step, flood the zone with chaos. Authoritarians know a secret that democracies forget. People under stress, they stop checking for the exits. Chaos disorients. Chaos exhausts. Chaos erases memory of norms. And this is what Trump floods the zone with. Chaos. Every day an investigation here, a vendetta here, firings here, threats there, policy whiplash in the other place, personal scandals, manufactured crises, legal theatrics. Chaos. And it becomes impossible for the public to track the damage. Trump has a mania that is ceaseless and is ununderstandable by an ordinary person. But it's what he loves. It's where he lives. Chaos. He is a manufacturer and a purveyor and an imposer of chaos. And that's the point. So much, and I listed some of it at the beginning of the show, the things that he's done. But he's done so many things. It becomes impossible for the public to track the damage, and that's the point. When every day is another 5-alarm fire, people eventually stop asking, is this normal? And they ask, what now? And that's the goal. Exhaustion is governance. So the third step would be break the guardrails, not with armies, not with tanks, but with boldness. When Trump demolished the East Wing, he wasn't renovating, he was testing the line. How far can he go unchecked? What happens if he destroys a federal landmark? Who stops him? So far, the answer has been no one. So he escalates, and he will. He will always do this. This is what he is. Fires inspectors general, ignores congressional subpoenas, overrules ethics boards, threatens civil service, replaces experts with sycophants. The guardrails don't fail because they're weak. They fail because the driver doesn't care if the car flips. It's like that, honestly, a song I like by Aerosmith called Living on the Edge that shows kids who literally don't care if they crash the car and they rejoice in it. I recommend it. It's a good song. I would sing it, but it's not that kind of show. The fourth step, co-opt the law enforcement arm. Every autocrat needs a justice system that punishes enemies, a police apparatus that looks the other way, a prosecutorial arm that chases ghosts, a loyal core of pardoned extremists who understand the winks and the nods. Trump has that. He's already turned DOJ into a score-settling weapon. He's filled key positions with loyalists. He's using pardons as currency. That's not ideology, that's muscle. Fifth step, claim absolute legitimacy. Authoritarians always do the same ritual. They declare themselves the only rightful leader. And if the elections go against Donald Trump, watch for him to do that. They hint that they cannot be removed. It's unfair. The election is unfair. They will keep the rightful representatives, elected representatives of the people, from being sworn in, and they hold a lock over the House. Why? So his authority, so his rightfulness, so his legitimately can't be questioned, because he's barring the gates against constitutional democratic government. So he'll hint that he cannot be removed. And as we get closer to the 2026 elections and after, and you heard Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's leaving. And she's leaving because she doesn't want to be in the minority. And she thinks that Trump is definitely going to lose and that the House is going to go over the Democrats. So stay tuned to Politics by Jake in 2026. We got a month left in 2025. I want you to stay tuned for that. But in 2026, that's when it gets big, and we'll be here, God willing. So they hint that they cannot be removed. They imply elections are suspect. They insist they are the will of the people incarnate. Trump has already said, I'm the only one who can fix it. If they take me down, they take down the country. What did he say about the 2025 elections? He said the Republicans lost because I was not on the ballot. Well, I mean, guess again. Trump most assuredly was on the ballot. But the point is that he said that. Elections were stolen before, they can be stolen again. Presidents need total immunity. I have to be free to commit criminal acts, of which I was declared guilty 34 times. But that's no good. I need to be free from that. That last one, that's the big one. Because if the president believes he cannot commit a crime, then he has already crowned himself king. Then step number 6, force the public into submission through fatigue. This is the part Americans don't see and won't see until they're standing in the rubble. Constant chaos leads to burnout. Burnout leads to apathy. Trump glories in these things. Trump and those who follow him rejoice in these things. They eat it up like they eat breakfast, with appetite. Burnout leads to apathy. Apathy leads to acceptance. Acceptance leads to normalization. And all of a sudden, the country that once celebrated checks and balances just shrugs when the president talks about executing senators, not because they agree, but because they're tired. Authoritarianism doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it just needs a population that's just too exhausted to resist. And the final step, make counter-mobilization impossible. The goal here isn't just to consolidate power, it's to demoralize everybody else. You reduce turnout. You scare off activists. You send illegal poll watchers to intimidate the electorate. That's why poll watchers are illegal. It's illegal. You can't do it. He's doing it anyway. Ad hoc organizations so enthrall to Trump that they will do anything he says will, in an ad hoc way, be poll watchers. So you scare off activists. You scare off the electorate. You chill the free and fair election. Criminalize protest. Threaten journalists. Warp reality. until people lose faith in the truth itself. A country that doubts its own eyes cannot defend its own freedom. So where does this leave us? It leaves us here at the hinge. It leaves us at the moment before decline becomes collapse, the moment before the slow erosion becomes permanent, the moment when Americans decide whether this is the country they recognize or the one they're willing to lose. Because I'll tell you something. Autocrats don't succeed because they're strong. They succeed because the public is tired. And my message to you is simple. Don't get tired. Get loud. Get awake. Get serious. Democracy is a muscle. You lose it if you don't use it. And this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. And this is Politics by Jake. Welcome back. I'm glad to have you all back and listening. Welcome, welcome, welcome all. This is part 5 of this broadcast, which will be a podcast also, and you may be listening to it now as a podcast from youtube.com, entitled, and part 5 I've entitled The American Counteroffensive, How We Win This Before 2026. And number 1, name the threat. You can't defeat what you refuse to identify. If things are normal, if you insist on both sidesism, if you insist on a naive equality, a demand, an insistence upon it, it's not going to work. You have to call out what this is. This is not right versus left. This is not conservative versus liberal. This is not policy versus policy. This is democracy versus authoritarian capture, period. And when you name a threat correctly, you build the right defenses. 2, second, federalism is the shield. Use it. Blue states and purple states hold enormous power. They can block federal overreach. They can refuse deployments. They can protect electoral infrastructure. They can prosecute federal lawbreakers locally. They can issue statewide injunctions. They can protect voting access independent of Congress. Federalism is a weapon in the hands of governors who understand it. 3, courts are fragile, so law must be relentless. Every norm that Trump has abused, him and his fascist cabal, many of whom sit in cabinet posts and ought to be impeached. Every norm that they have abused is now a legal battlefield. Emoluments, obstruction, misuse of federal resource, illegal detentions, threats against legislators, demolition of federal property, interference with states. Every act must be challenged relentlessly, everywhere, constantly, because autocrats thrive when the opposition is tired. So don't get tired. 4th, control the narrative. Authoritarianism collapses when you expose the architecture behind it. People are frightened of monsters in the dark. They're less frightened when you turn on the lights and show the wiring and call them the poor little rich boy and call them Mikey. Tell people what's happening. Have them listen to this podcast. Tell them why it's happening. how it fits in the pattern, what comes next, how to fight it. Clarity is armor. And fifth, turn out like lives depend on it, because they do. In authoritarian slide states, the public wins by overwhelming the system. Turnout so large that gerrymanders fail. Intimidation loses power, legal sabotage collapses, certification challenges become untenable, court manipulation becomes irrelevant, and when a democracy in collapse turns out at 72%, 78%, 80%, authoritarianism dies. Full stop. That's it. And sixth, prepare the people emotionally. This is one rarely said out loud, but I feel like I need to bring it home. This fight will be exhausting. It will be ugly. It will get worse before it gets better. If you have a sense of destiny, of your own destiny, or of the destiny of the country, know this. You have been placed in this country at this time to be experiencing and given the opportunity to participate in this fight. So keep that in mind, all of you who are listening to this. But of course, Americans have something that authoritarians always underestimate. They have a long memory for freedom. We didn't fight monarchs, robber barons, segregationists, fascists, and McCarthyists just to bow down to a B-list autocrat with a gold-plated toilet, to bow down to Mikey and his cacostocratic cabinet of nonsense and baloney. Democracy is muscle. It's muscle. It grows stronger when you exercise it. It grows stronger under strain. And the strain is here. Now, to close, this is Politics by Jake. And I'm telling you now, this is the storm before the pushback. He can threaten senators. He can demolish wings of the White House. He can call for executions. He can pardon his private army. He can try to govern like a king. But kings don't survive in a country full of people who still remember how to stand up straight. The republic is not dead. It's waking up. And when it wakes up, no strong man in history has survived that moment. Stay tuned. Stay awake. Stay loud. Stay free. This is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. If you think owning things in your own name keeps you in control, think again. In today's world, lawsuits, taxes, and predators are everywhere. That's why the smart money hides in plain sight. We help you to build legal firewalls, LLCs, land trusts, private contracts that protect your assets while keeping you invisible. Call Twain Consulting today at 310-997-2204. Find us on Facebook at Twain Consulting. That's facebook.com/Twain Consulting. Protect what you've built before someone else takes it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. The world is unraveling fast. Governments are weakening, markets are crashing, chaos is looming. You need more than hope. You need a plan. Collapse Protocol gives you the tools to protect your assets, secure your future, and survive the storm. Don't wait for the collapse to hit. Prepare now. Visit Twain Consulting at facebook.com/Twain Consulting or call 213-465-0639. Collapse Protocol, your shield when everything else fails. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/Politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together.